So good evening and a very warm welcome to all our panelists and viewers joining us from across the globe for the first session in this wonderful initiative of the Next Architect, conceptualized by Hindware and ETS Tech. As an event, the Next Architect will always hold a very special place in my heart, as right from the very first thought to shaping this up and having Hindware to share this vision and Ria's expertise to structure and fine-tune this event, it's been a great journey of last 1 month with the entire team working for this project. Talking in brief about the platform, the Next Architect is an initiative to reach out to the young, successful, and next generation architects of the world, bringing them at a common platform to ideate and forge a discussion on the future of architecture and design as the world is changing its design appetite at an alarming speed. Today's session will throw light on the impact of technology in architecture and design, and I'm sure our speakers will do full justice in making this a great exchange of ideas and knowledge to the entire next generation of budding architects and designers listening to us today. With that, I take the opportunity to introduce our first Next Architect of the season, architect Saurabhjit Mitra from Square Consultancy Services, who's made it here from hundreds of nominations we've received for the season. So yeah, congrats Saurabhjit.
Thank you for letting me in here.
Pleasure. Thank you, Ria, once again for putting this together and being such a wonderful, crucial part of the series. Without any further delay, I'd like to introduce the panel. Architect Ria Patel. Ria Patel is an architecture designer working at PCF. While at PCF, Ria has been involved in projects such as Commercial Tower for the Rockefeller Group in Manhattan, a mixed-use winery campus in Israel, a ballet school in Copenhagen, commercial campuses in New Jersey and Bangalore, residential and mixed-use towers in Jerusalem. Since her graduation from Pratt Institute, Ria has demonstrated her mission to foster sustainability by being an active member of international organizations such as USGBC and IWBI. Shashwat Somani. Shashwat Somani is the Vice President Strategy at Hindware and the third generation of the family business. He graduated with a double major in economics and psychology from the University of California, Los Angeles in 2017. Following his graduation, he worked with a consulting firm in Gurgaon for 2 years and then joined Hindware in early 2020. Shashwat has got strong expertise in sales, marketing, data analytics, product management, and team leadership. He's an avid reader and often spends most of his free time reading biographies, business management books. He's a great TV buff and enjoys watching movies and TV shows. Arjun Malik. There was always a certain inevitability about Arjun's decision to be an architect. It was ultimately the paradoxical nature of the profession and the belief through constant exposure to his father's practice that architecture, like cinema or literature, was a medium for commentary and personal expression that led him down this path. Arjun completed his bachelor's in architecture at Rachna Sansad Academy of Architecture and went on to receive Master of Science in Advanced Architecture Design from the Columbia University in New York. He then returned to join his father's 30-year-old firm in 2005. Through his work, he's always tried to develop an idiom that would reconcile the intellectual aspects of architecture, that would provide a tangible link to the past without getting nostalgic, that would be technologically progressive without being experimentally stunted, and that would ultimately speak through the intangible science of perceptual phenomena. The current overemphasis on the intellectual and conceptual dimensions of architecture has contributed to the disappearance of the physical, sensual, and embodied essence of architecture. Architect Poonam Mehta. AMPM Designs is the brainchild that was incubated with a purpose to create structures which are a blend of unfathomable imagination, creativity, and ethereal designs. Poonam Mehta's phenomenal designing sense and Akash Mehta's exceptional expertise in lighting design resulted in the inception of AMPM Designs. A commendable passion for design combined with extraordinary entrepreneurship skills is responsible for taking the company to a crescendo with international and various design awards and features. Within a short span, AMPM Designs has come to be recognized as an acclaimed design firm that combines sensitivity and professionalism to deliver awe-inspiring designs and space solutions. The super talented team works in close collaboration with clients using light and luxury to reveal an extraordinary product that inspires positively, influences its users. AMPM Designs has come to be known for its luxurious homes that exude a signature style and character. Down to the last style, their unforgiving eye for detail ensures that client vision is percolated to the very last nook. Architect Zeynep Erolat. Born and raised in Istanbul, Turkey, Zeynep is an architect based in Brooklyn, New York. During and after graduation from Pratt Institute School of Architecture, she has moved on. She has worked at some of the most prominent architectural firms in New York City, such as Eisman Architects and Enniad Architects. She founded Zarolat in 2018, an interdisciplinary design studio that focuses on creating conscious spaces to enhance social awareness by adopting contextual parameters as the main source of design. While the architecture projects reflect sensitive solutions for everyday problems, Zarolat's work range from furniture and paintings to interactive digital experiences, which have been exhibited in significant art events globally. Architect Ericsson. Eric is a senior computational designer at Core Studio, an R&D studio inside Thornton Tomasity that specializes in computational modeling and application development. As a studio, he works on team-developed web applications that focus on data visualization, design optimization, and cloud parametric solutions for the AEC industry. Our next architect, Surabjit Mitra. Surabjit Mitra and Renit Mehti completed their bachelor degree in architecture and master's degree in urban design from Jadavpur University. They founded an architecture consultancy firm, Square Consultancy Services, in September 2008. Winners of numerous awards and accolades, including IIID, Be Young Designer, and AICA, their work focuses mainly on the combination of contemporary and anachronistic design style. Subhrajit has worked as a member of EC, Indian Institute of Architects, and the WB chapter. That's it. Thank you so much. And over to you, Riya and Shashwat. Have a great, fantastic session ahead.
Thank you, Viraj.
Thank you,
Hi,
Viraj.
everyone. I'm Riya. I'm the curator and moderator of today's session of The Next Architect, which is based on technology in architecture. As we all know, technology has played a crucial role in transforming the way in which we design as architects, whether it's data-driven design that allows us to iterate through multiple prototypes and fine-tune our work based on multiple environmental or project parameters, or softwares that streamline workflows, new fabrication techniques, or smart building technologies that enable us to be more conscious about the way buildings perform over time. The means by which we design and execute our projects is constantly evolving. I'm an architect practicing in New York, and I work at Takeoff Fried & Partners. I've been exploring new fabrication methodologies, both through my own design explorations and my work at PCF. I was recently a part of an independent team that worked on an installation for the Venice Biennale that employed a robotic arm in order to fabricate digital and intelligent bricks. In order to stay engaged with the latest softwares that have been developed for architects, I recently participated in Thornton Tomasetti's hackathon last year, and I learned about some amazing projects that are really pushing the boundaries of our current workflows in design. For instance, while our project was looking at how we can use augmented reality in order to allow stakeholders to make more informed design decisions, there were a lot of interesting projects that were being developed along the way. We had the developers of Rhino mentoring us through the project, and I'm sure Eric will tell us more about some of the events. I believe TT is having their hackathon this week, Eric?
I see it's later next month.
Okay, so I guess they're going to keep us informed about the amazing stuff that's coming out of there.
Yeah,
But
sure.
these are just a few instances of the way technology can influence the architecture practice. And we have an amazing panel out here today with a diverse background and expertise that'll be sharing the way in which they work as architects and designers and how technology has influenced their projects. Please do send in questions below. We will be picking them up at the end of the panel discussion. And I'm going to move to Shashwat to begin the conversation.
Thank you, Riya. Hi, everyone. My name is Shashwat Samani. I'm going to first be talking to Arjun. Hey, Arjun, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Shashwat.
Awesome. The topic today is about technology. And the first question that I have for you is, just in your view, how do you see technology shaping architecture today?
It's, I think, in a way, kind of a paradoxical question because it's everything, and yet I think, at least from our perspective, working, living and working in India, which as a developing nation with very deep history, both social, cultural, and building and material. It's really a question of being able to tap into global intelligence in order to be able to evolve local methods and resource. So we don't really operate in a vacuum. Our responsibilities are a bit different, at least when you're practicing in a subcontinent. So fortunately, I've also had a chance, at my time in Colombia, to look at very, very advanced fabrication techniques. But once you come back to the ground in a place like India, it's really about understanding what you have on the ground, relevant technologies. We are very, very different to developed nations in terms of the balance between industrialization and human and craft resources. So I think it's important for us to be able to tap into that. So I don't think it's about operating in a vacuum. It's really about using technology and making sure technology doesn't use you.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point that you've raised. I mean, that's something that's very, very interesting on an existential level, also on our daily lives as well. Could you tell us how you implement technology in your design process through a project that you worked on recently?
Is this my cue to share the screen? or sorry,
Yes,
is the time? Okay, fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that.
Okay, we're on the iPad here.
Sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay, I don't know why it's doing this, but it's going backwards. Sorry. Just call it a sneak preview.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly, use two examples of these are small projects. They are actually located in two very distinct regions of India. The first one is in Rajasthan. I'm not sure. I'm sure most people are familiar with the place, but for those who aren't, it's again a very deep and storied history, of a place. And I know we tend to associate it more with romantic tales and palaces and highly decorative architecture. But following up to just to what I said earlier about being able to tap into a very deep accumulated intelligence that has evolved historically, through multiple traditions. These are familiar images, right? And apart from technology, I think if you look at each of these images, there is an incredible history and intelligence embedded here, whether it be the step wells on the top left, which are not just water storages, but they also become social spaces. They stay cool in the summer, whether it's courtyards, whether it's screens, which express both a kind of cultural tradition of hand carving, whether they talk about privacy, whether they talk about the cooling of air through evaporative cooling and the Venturi effect. It's just that even historical technologies have evolved so much that I think it's our responsibility as practitioners today to be able to understand and carry these technologies forward. This is a stone quarry that was 45 minutes from our site, very strongly informed our decision regarding the material technology. Now, even a simple act of quarrying stone, historically they used to quarry stone by drilling holes into the stone and either inserting water at high pressure or using a controlled explosion. This traditional way of harvesting stone gave way to gang saw cutting because the quarry simply couldn't keep up with the demand for stone. And the moment you cut stone with a saw, it essentially loses all of its texture, all of its grain, and it becomes a lifeless surface. And then we get into a kind of, superficial applied ornamentation onto the stone. So we were heavily cursed by our quarry manager when we told him that, can we please go back to the earlier technique of harvesting stone, because that way we simply get the imprint of the land into the project without having to over-mediate any of the surfaces. Working in a place like Rajasthan, the entire vocabulary of stone, over years has essentially evolved into a material for cladding or for ornamentation or for decoration. I don't think we've taken the next evolutionary step in understanding its performance, both climatically as well as structurally. So one of the decisions we took at the start of this project is to essentially work only with a single material. And starting from there, we created a huge amount of complication for ourselves. What you see is just one of the drawings. Now, I like to refer to this as something called primitive parametricism. I think it's a term that was coined by RCR, and I think it's very relevant to what we've done here, because there were no digital fabrication techniques. Sorry. Carol, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, you're
there is
audible.
a slight echo.
Okay. Okay. So when we started to work with a single material for a basement plus 3-level structure, I suppose the complication starts with what size of stone to use, because when you're working with a brick, you kind of have predefined sizes, but with stone, you can harvest blocks that are 20 feet, long. So how do you decide, how do you fix the DNA of the project? And I think this is where very high-tech engineering is able to, hybridize with a local know-how, because the masons who worked on this project, they live in the surrounding villages. They have worked on this material for generations. And that is how their understanding, a very intuitive understanding of this material has evolved. They were the ones who told us that we would be much better off working with a stone size that could be handled by 2 laborers without any sort of machinery. And we finally came down to a size of 4 foot by 1 foot by 6 inches. And that became the DNA for the project. The differently coded stones obviously come down to the U shapes, the L shapes, the lintels, the vaults. But a simple axonometric of the basement and the 3 levels is every component of this house, whether it be the single slab staircases, the cavity walls, the retaining walls, the rafts, the load-bearing openings. Everything was essentially handcrafted out of a single material. Now, again, when we talk about these techniques and what has really changed from, let's say, centuries ago, you can actually look at the image on the top right, where you see the cavity wall. Now, traditionally, for a structure of this height, you would have worked with 2 foot thick solid walls, maybe tapering up to about 18 inches. But we were able to reverse engineer these down to a consistent 18-inch wall with a 6-inch external layer, 6-inch internal layer, and a 6-inch cavity, which had great thermal performance and also allowed you to run all your services through it. And they had a very minimal steel shear bracing for seismic loading. And that's exactly what the site looked like. And, we're so used to getting onto sites where people are pouring concrete and it's a complete mess. And then you have steel. And very often, coming into these sites, we were actually, we couldn't figure whether there was something actually being built out of the ground or we had actually uncovered an archaeological ruin. And this is how very, very complex engineering meets a local scenario where everything here is done by hand. You can see the texture of the stone is exactly as it's emerged from the ground. And these are subsequent images of how the site developed. And, very old vault forming techniques. And that's how interior space starts to feel. So you literally take away all the painting, the plaster, the false ceilings, everything is completely raw. It's almost like something that is hewn out of a single stone. You're almost approaching the language of a contemporary ruin. And somewhere there are stories and poetry built into it. If you see this one piece of stone, which is the lintel for the springing point of the vault, we actually brought this stone to Bombay because when I went to site, I saw this incredible pattern that had been cut into the stone. And, so I asked the mason, how did this happen? And he explained to me that he had used this stone as a base to cut his other stones. And therefore, every time that blade cut through the stone, it started to form these wonderful striations across the natural texture of the stone. And, I'd argue it would take hours and hours of computational technology to get something this authentic. But it just happens really through, a authenticity of process and a certain rigor towards being as simple and unmediated as possible. It's almost impossible to imagine a solid stone house where door jambs, you can even see in the vault lintel, the two recesses that are cut in for the windows and the blinds. To be able to construct a solid stone house at a cost that is lower than an RCC frame with stone cladding and internal blockworks and plaster and painting. It's all about the region and being able to engineer it correctly and tap into local know-how. A very interesting collision that happened here. The single cantilevered stone piece, right? When our engineer visited the site, he said, look, we're going to need brackets for this. Otherwise it's going to fall. And the Mistri or the mason, right, with the intuitive knowledge of stone, simply said there's absolutely no way you need a bracket. And this banter continued back and forth until the stone mason proved his point by doing that. And he actually made these guys jump up and down on the stone. And I think it's a very important lesson to understand, at least for us in developing countries, to kind of find a balance between theoretical know-how and accumulated knowledge built over centuries. And yeah, I'm just going to take you through some of the images during construction. And it's amazing that we can now fabricate hardware to be able to pick up mobile devices for solid hand-cut stone screens. And there's a kind of, rawness to the entire, I mean, even if you look at the image to the right and you can see different textures of stones. I mean, we haven't marked these out in the drawing. We've simply let the masons on site just use their judgment. And, these textures develop almost organically. They're extremely raw. They're extremely earthy. But I think what they finally point towards is an authenticity of the process. And the images are very, very evocative of some of the old. And that's how we can actually open up the house. And of course, once you start to look at the material and the light and the kind of magic it creates, and of course, avoid doctoring the process, leave nature to its devices. And these are the kind of, unbelievable images and textures that you can develop on site. Look, it's already it's almost 8 minutes. Can I quickly take this up or should we just drop it here? Ria?
No, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead.
Okay.
It's great to see the work that you're doing. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly run through this. This is actually our own home in the hills outside Bombay. What you can see to the top right is a very jagged profile of Tung Fort. This entire region surrounding the lake actually has 5 of Shivaji's forts, and that served as a major anchor for our project, but that's not the part I'm going to discuss today. It's a highly sloped site. It's almost a ground floor structure, but due to the slopes of the land, it stretches over 6 levels. And there are no floor separations here. Wherever you start to find spaces between the trees on the slopes, that's where you start to locate the house. Now, in terms of material technology, whilst the previous project almost used material as the site, this one looks at how material bends to the kind of topographical orientation of a site. Now, if we were working on a flat site, it would be very, very easy for us to interconnect roofs across the floor profiles. But as you start to move habitable spaces across levels, sometimes extreme and sometimes quite gentle, you can start to see how the roof technologies evolved. And that's how the roof for that space finally formed. And that's how the project evolved. There was a very strong, anchor in terms of all the trees around us, and we started to develop structural systems through the analysis of trees. So the basic device of construction here is a hybrid wood and steel construction. I think it's just a simple flitched mechanism. But again, the engineering process was heavily adapted for site construction because the engineer said that you should basically lay the structure out on site and build it up on the ground and then erect it into place. But we actually executed this through a separate steel fabrication agency, and then all the woodwork was done by carpenters, and all of it really behaves structurally. You can see the countersunk staggered bolting systems that make this work compositely. And it's incredible to have seen these skeletons evolving on site. I almost, was feeling really bad about putting a roofing system on top of it. We should have just left it as it is. But as the primary, secondary, and tertiary members started to overlap, they formed these, wonderful geometries across the site. And that's pretty much what it looks like, what at least looked like 2 years ago. It's gotten even more deeply forested. And so yeah, I think it's really about, using technology, trying to bend technology to your will and understanding a, overarching concept to a project. And then using technology really where it helps you. It's a very, very, very complex engineering project. We had the good fortune to work with the German engineers who also extensively work with people like, OMA and Zaha Hadid and Frank Gehry. It's a unique opportunity to deal with engineers at that level. And really, it's about a material and technology adapting to a site. You can see how you almost open up panoramas to one end by simply taking all the roof loads to one side. So really, it's about material adapting to site and concept. All right, that's it. I'm going to stop my share.
Right. Thank you so much, Arjun. Yeah, as you said, I think it's really great to see the way in which your design process uses materials and technology to kind of hone in on the regionalist and earthy material aspect of your design. Even with the complex roof structure that we just saw, I'm sure that a lot of work went into engineering and getting it together. I'm going to now move on to Eric and ask him about how his work has been influenced by technology and design. Can you first start off by telling us a little bit about the Core Studio and what your role is there?
Sure. Maybe I can start sharing my slides because I'll be explaining a little bit about myself over there too.
Sure.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Han-Shan Sun. I'm a senior computational designer at Core Studio. So Core Studio is a small team inside of Thornton Tomasetti, which happens to be this engineering firm that has offices across different parts of the world. We focus on different aspects of engineering in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. And then, as I mentioned before, our company is relatively big, but then we have a small team of about 20 people that's building custom applications and doing computational modeling for the entire company and our clients. So for today, I mainly want to talk about some of the applications we developed over the past 3 or 4 years, and then how they can help with the architectural design process. So all of our applications mainly focus on of these 4 categories. So we focus on automation, interoperability, visualization, and structural AI. The first app I want to talk about is Construe. So Construe is actually one of our first commercialized applications that we have developed in the past. So what Construe does is a platform that connects all of our design and analysis softwares. So for example, let's say if we get a schematic design from the architects in Rhino form, then we can easily transfer the model of architects through Grasshopper and then send it into Revit for documentation. We can easily also use Construe to send the Revit model into analysis software such as SAP or ETABS for structural analysis and etc. This diagram basically shows how Construe can help you in the design process. So starting from the schematic design, we'll have Rhino and Grasshopper at the beginning. And then over here, we transfer the architect's model from Rhino and Grasshopper through Construe into CSS SAP for analysis. Then later on the project lifecycle, we use Construe to send the analysis model with its data and model elements directly into Revit, so we don't have to reconstruct the model entirely from scratch again. And then since we also have the attributes and data from the analysis model, we can easily use those data into our annotation of the drawings that can facilitate our document set and drawing generation. And then around the very end of the project lifecycle, we actually use Constructio to send it to Tekla, where we do our fabrication level modeling. And the beauty of Constructio is that you can always go back and forth. So let's say if you make some work in the Tekla model, you can always update it back into Revit and send it to the architect for them to review as well. The second application I want to talk about today is Thread. So Thread is basically a design data exploration platform. So basically, Thread has an interactive layout where you can query your data, and then in this kind of different type of charts on the left, and then as you are navigating your layout on the left, highlighting different elements, you can also query your model on the right and then highlight different elements accordingly. So in this case, let's say I'm highlighting material IDs that's like steel material, and then all of the model elements on the right that has the same material will show up in red as well. So in the past, we actually built this installation project. It's basically like a suspended structure that's hanging on top of a rooftop of a stadium. And then as you can see here, this kind of installation has about 3 sides, and then it's composed with many square circles in different sizes at different height. So we actually use Thread as a way of understanding how the model looks like. So for example, on the lower right, you have this 3D model of the actual installation. And then on the upper right, we have this kind of dotted chart where you can see a relationship between the height of the model and the area. So from this, we can kind of see that the bigger area, like the panel with bigger area, mainly concentrate along the top and the bottom of the model. As we move towards the middle part of the installation, you can see that more smaller pieces start to congregate around the middle side of it. We can also highlight this entire model by different chunks. So if you highlight over this bar chart on the Z-axis, you can see all the Z section of the model will be highlighted as well. We also have used it in one of our past urban planning project before. So in this case, we were working with one of the architects to try to win this urban planning competition. So we built up this dashboard where the client, this is a report we send to our client, where the client can interact with the 3D model on the right. In the actual report, they can actually pan around and then zoom into the model. And then as they highlight on the left, they can actually see how the program is being breakdown down. So you can see the relationship between, in terms of square footage, between the retail space, the office, residential, and hotel. And then as you highlight, so as I hover over retail space, you can see the model being, the retail space in the model being highlighted, while the rest of the model being grayed out. And then the next application I want to talk about is Swarm. So Swarm is a design app marketplace and cost solver. So myself has been a power user for Grasshopper in the past, and then I have always had issue with sharing the Grasshopper script that I built as a tool with my colleague or my friend. So the idea of Swarm in one part is to, let's say, wrap up your Grasshopper script on the right and then package them into your application where different designers, whether they know how to use Grasshopper or not, can open up your application easily, and then they can run your application in Rhino, Illustrator, and Revit. So as a powerful Grasshopper users, typically, like a lot of times you'll end up having messy script like this, where it'll be really hard for people out, rather than you, to understand what's going on in the script, what are you trying to do, where is my input and output, what kind of a result I'm getting. So it's very hard for collaboration between Grasshopper users or just between the tool maker and the designer itself. So we actually build out this kind of plugins where inside Grasshopper you can easily use this component to package your input and output of the Grasshopper script together into a user interface on the right, where you can see the name of the application, the list of inputs as sliders, and then outputs as geometries. And then once you push this button, it'll be uploading your application to our cloud where different people can use your app over there. And that's what we call a marketplace for your apps. And this is basically what the marketplace looks like. So you have a bunch of different applications made by different people. And then you can easily search and find the applications that you're interested in. So you can see that some of them relates to generating building design, some of them relates to the analysis on buildings, some of them just mainly just do pattern generations and geometry generations, and etc. And for example, if I'm interested in this app called Tower Generator, I can easily click into the play button and then start running my different iterations online. So in this case, you're totally seeing this in a web browser, so you don't have to have Rhino or any kind of software open. And then you can just, by dragging playing with the sliders, it'll send you back a new iterations according to your input. And then you can start playing around with this design and see if it fits. And then if you like it, you can actually share with your client or your colleague and then have them to take a look at it. So just showcase different Swarm apps. So this one is for you to generate towers. You can also run radiation analysis using Ladybug on Swarm. You can use it both in Rhino, Revit, or just play around with our browser interface. You can also do structure analysis. So in this case, you just have to input a massing and a core by adjusting the dimension of X and Y dimension in the bay sizing, and then setting up your floor to floor height. You can easily generate a structural skeleton of your building. And then if you click into one of the elements, you can see that it already assigned a profile to you using some of our background structure analysis components, and etc. And then so Swarm as itself, you can run it in Rhino, and then you can bake geometry, right? And then once you change your sliders, you can generate a new input and new iterations, and you can bake it as well. You can also run it in Illustrator and Revit. So we see it being very useful for some of the folks who want to have this kind of parametric design inside of Revit, where they can build a Swarm app in Grasshopper and they easily run their Swarm app in Revit to generate some of the building designs. And lastly, the last app I want to talk about is Asterisk. So we designed Asterisk for designers so they can basically run structure analysis and figuring out what kind of option would be the best for their design. A lot of times, as structural engineering firm, we get accounts like during the early design phases in the project, we receive a lot of different revisions from the architects, and then sometimes, let's say, maybe during the time span of a week, we can receive like 10 different design iterations, and it's hard for us to keep up running structure analysis and then get them the feedback. Sometimes by the time we finish running our structure analysis, they already move on to the next iterations. So the idea over here is, can we make an app that can leverage the experience of 1,000 engineers and apply it in seconds? So in this case, we actually have our own machine learning library in the backend where we train it using some of our past projects. And the idea is that by using machine learning rather than actual structure analysis, we can generate the feedback and send it to client within a matter of minutes rather than hours or days. And then from there, we actually have a random plugin built out where you can easily reference your building massing and your building core inside Rhino. And then once you have that, you can play around with your base sizing, your floor height, and then I'll give you a ballpark in terms of what's your total area, what's your cost, and then what kind of embodied energy it's going to generate, and then what's the total weight. And then over here is basically the end of my presentation. As Ria mentioned before, we have this annual event called the AEC Tech Academy. which usually houses around the end of the year, so like September, October. In the past, it has been in person, where we also have like both the academy part and the hackathon. But this year we are moving entirely online. So if you're interested in participate, just let me know, and I can send you some link to register. And that's it.
Great, thank you, Eric. I love the way in which a lot of the work that you're doing allows parametric and computational design tools to be a lot more accessible to designers and architects. And we don't necessarily need to know the sophisticated, computational backend processes that occur in order to execute our design ideas. And it really helps streamline workflows, as you showed. And while a lot of the work that you do facilitates execution and the processes on the software end, I'd love to rope in Zainab at the moment to pitch in here and talk about some of her work as a designer working with digital media to transform physical experience. So Zainab, can you tell us a little bit about Rote, which is your installation that you worked on in Miami, and tell us how you use technology to transform the physical experience of the exhibition?
Yes, thank you so much, Ria, first of all, for having me here to be invited. It's a pleasure, really. And I'm gonna share my screen and start talking about it with some of the visuals we have. Yes, I think we're good. Right. Can everybody see the screen?
Not yet.
I'm not able to see it yet.
No?
No.
Is it only me? Oh, okay. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Well, thanks again for having me. This is a very interesting, topic, to be honest, because, I've been thinking a lot about it, how technology sometimes help us actually to, do things in an easier way, but sometimes it actually makes our lives harder, and I'm sure some of you can agree. But today, well, I'm an architect, and I'm actually based in New York, but I'm from Turkey. But today I'm actually only going to talk about a collaboration we did in 2018 with my good friend Salih, who is a very talented digital artist and who is also here with us right now as a participant. And I'm going to be talking about our installation we did for Raw Pop-Up, which is a very creative group of people that basically rent out super important historical buildings all around Miami. And this building is the Moore Building in the Miami Design District. So there was an existing installation by Zaha Hadid in the building, which you can see, and it's called the Elastica. And when we got into the building, this is very powerful and all that. We didn't know how the space was gonna how the space and the event was going to actually move around us. So when we saw this installation, I think we thought it was the best place to activate it with projection mapping. So Rote is an interactive, spatial, and a digital installation. It's an experience that is designed to become a machine to enhance social awareness. It is more than one thing at the same time. It's a live data sculpture which can activate any physical structure by projection mapping. Oh my God, sorry. But also, most importantly, it's actually, it does more than one thing at the same time. It's an installation that questions our perception of time, scale, and space, as well as our physical and social boundaries that exist in our everyday life. I'm going to tell you about how it works because it has different aspects. It's a little, but just because it does a lot of things simultaneously. The first Rote took place in the Moore Building in Miami in the Design District for Raw Pop-Up, like I told you, and activated Zaha Hadid's site-specific installation called the Elastica. With the help of a device that was basically a people counters device that we installed at the entrance of the building, the human behavior was being constantly recorded, which was then translated in a visual language that reflected the density of the space at the same time. So I'm going back here just for you to see this generic points and lines, which basically reflects the density of the space, because with the help of the people counters device, we constantly recorded the circulation of people, actually the people coming into the space, and by this constant recording, this animation got denser and denser as the space got denser during the event. It was a 3-day event, and we actually counted more than 6,000 people, which changed the animation density every minute. So it's a very generic looking lines and points actually, but it actually represents the number of people that are in this space. But the most important part for me is the social impact that we try to actually reflect with this. Every time the count of visitors reaches to a certain number, which was coded in the algorithm before it went live, the animation distorts itself like this, as like an OTV, to warn us with a global fact, a basic daily statistic to compare the scale of everyday patterns and to question current problems that exist in our society, basically. This is a very non-special, let's say, less special, let's say, statistics, a fact, but it was more like women and children statistics that I wanted to share with the audience, like these, the number of people. For example, if it was 40 people inside, the fact was saying 40 million children worldwide live without adequate shelter. So these facts were coded in the algorithm before the installation went live, and with the live data we get from the number of people from that people counters device, we actually, the machine itself reflected these global statistics. And for us, I think the most challenging part was to combine all these different aspects together and to create a multidisciplinary piece, and of course to make sure everything was working smoothly technically, because you know sometimes it actually makes it harder without having that analog touch, the sense of things. And the facts that were compiled for the first road in Miami for this one was mostly global facts accessible to all, but they were filtered to be more about women and children statistics and some of the current problems that are urgent for me to talk about. And we also had another road in Istanbul that adapted itself to the Turkish actually statistics, let's say, some more specific issues of Turkey, which again included a lot of statistics that reflected gender equality, inequality, which is a very concerning matter, unfortunately, in our country. We also had a separate projection screen that recorded all these data, or recorded all these facts, once they were actually shown with the distortion. So, but I want to talk about how, oh no, sorry. For me, for us actually, Rote is flexible and is able to adapt to itself anywhere, any site that has a controlled circulation and that has a physical structure that we can project map on. But my aim is to actually have it as a traveling installation that can activate public spaces instead of private galleries, so that we can include more people to be a part of the process and constantly grow awareness about the specific issues unique to its context. So wherever Rote goes, it aims to adapt itself to its context, to whatever problem that exists in the neighborhood, in the community, in the country, or in the city. So for us, actually, this is a very adaptable machine in itself that can work to different geographies, let's say.
Thanks, Zainab. I think it's really interesting to see how the installation is constantly evolving as more and more users engage with it, and that kind of grows the installation and the way it's being mapped on the structure, on existing historic structures, and on other installations within the Moore building, like you've shown. And you can see the way in which it really transforms the plain white interiors that you had initially shown with the projections, and it completely gives you this otherworldly sensation. And we'd like to ask Poonam about some of her work with transforming the interiors of spaces and her process through luxury interior design.
Hi.
If you want to take that over.
Hi.
Hi. Hey Poonam, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Poonam, now moving on from Zainab, she showed us that, in how beautiful interior spaces can be. And, you've worked on some amazing luxury interior projects. Would you like to tell us about what level of automation or technology is used in these interiors?
Yes, hi, this is Poonam Mehta, and I would just say that I'm really awed with all the projects that all the panelists so far have shown. I think it's brilliant and absolutely different from different kind of works from where we come from, I guess. Well, I'm going to concentrate on home automation, like you just said, because we use that technology a lot. And when we talk about luxury and luxury in design, I think the most important emphasis goes on the best technology for the house. We really work and study and kind of educate ourselves as much as possible to give the best solution to our client for just a comfort living. And I think technology brings in a lot. So let me I've kind of, just as my perception of technology when it comes to home, I've derived that into 4 categories. I'm going to quickly go. I've done a very, very small presentation, literally 3 slides. It just shows you the living spaces, the main public areas. Why I think my clients are not very comfortable when we show the private bedrooms and things like that. I think it's best so I just thought I'd quickly go through one project and how and what kind of technology we have used in this space. Okay, quickly.
वीडियो नहीं है बॉस का वीडियो वो अभी भेजेंगे वो कहाँ से अच्छा
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Can you guys see it?
Yeah, it's looking good.
Yeah.
Clear.
So, like I just mentioned, the 4 categories of, I'm just categorizing it so that it's what we specifically do. One is specifically smart homes, where we're talking about integration of voice commands, daylight sensors, curtain on scenes or on sensors. We also talk about task reminders and even air-conditioned timers, simply being able to control your house in one click. In this particular view, we have the staircase, which is again a staircase lights turns on with the sensor. We have passive sensors, which are motion sensors. Basic security camera systems have been integrated in the residence. And when you kind of leave the house, we just have one switch which kind of says it's all off to the entire, all the all the major lighting systems and everything kind of turns off. So this, as much as we try, so that's one part of thing. The other technology, that we try and do is majority, I think automation is very, very helpful with the security for the home. The most important elements like the window sensors, burglary alarms, phone integration. So one can just open the door for a staff sitting in the office, or while they're traveling. Kids, the security system for the children in the house, and passport controls for the doors and other entry and exit points. So again, in this particular, we have also added an third element, which is an recreational technology, where we are talking about, hidden doors. This particular panel over here, I don't know if you can see my cursor. It's this giant marble that is cladded on the wall, has actually a secret door to a bar. So this, and next to that is this beautiful mirror, which actually is the mirror TV. So again, the whole recreational part that kind of really brings that extra element to designing luxury homes. Of course, even things like the curtains are also have daylight sensors, so they have their timings and when they exactly draw or come together. So all of that is also been included. We also have the sliding doors and systems which are integrated with sensors. So again, I guess the best one can do with technology to kind of get comfort to the homes. Another interesting element that we really do and play emphasis to is lighting and AV automation. Lighting brings, like we just said, it sets the right mood. So if I can just take one space and turn the mood around with lighting by just one click, that possibility is with the new modern technology. So we try and integrate that with most of our projects, and that I think really emphasizes and brings in character to our design in general. Also, like we spoke about AV, there is something like the music library that you can store movies and music, and then if you're watching in the living room, you can move into your bedroom watching the same thing. So I think the whole integration of AV and the comfort that one gets with all of that is beautiful. Everything comes on your iPad, phone, etc., etc. That's basic things. But now I guess is just integrating that into a modern life, simply making your life comfortable. That's our take when it comes to technology and automation in homes. Okay, thank you. I'm just going to.
Thank you, Poonam.
Yeah, thank you, Poonam. It's great to see how your interior designs are influenced by technology, and you're really pushing forward automation and design to make smart homes and interiors. I'd love to move on to Shashwat and see what you think about technology in particular and the way it's transforming, the home, but also like bath spaces in particular, and some of your products that could you talk about them?
Yeah, sure. Charu, yeah, perfect. Thank you, Poonam. I think what you've shown is, this immense shift for the consumer in technology in their homes. I really think that due to the rapid pace of technology, that our lives have just fundamentally changed, and they're only going to keep evolving over time. And I see that extending to Hindware and to the bathroom space as well. It's not just your home; it extends to every aspect of your home, and it's more relevant today than ever for companies to be able to innovate and to keep up pace with that technology. We at Hindware pride ourselves at being at the forefront of innovation in the bathroom space. In 1960, my grandfather and my family, we were the first brand to introduce vitreous China sanitary ware in India. In 1999, our Bahadurgarh plant was the first plant to receive ISO accreditation, and we have no plans of slowing down this century. Um, um, this current COVID crisis has shown that, we have to be quick on our feet and we need to innovate as fast as possible. And it's highlighted the importance of health and hygiene. So one of the things we have introduced is our touch-free range of products across our brands. These include a range of faucets that are completely touch-free, as well as WCs. You can, flush at the wave of your hand. And we have two WCs that are touch-free and just auto flush. And we didn't want to stop there. Health and hygiene is important, but we wanted to really think about what technology means for the consumer today. And I think it's very important to always question the status quo and question what you have. And what we did was, as all of you are aware, there's a water closet. WC has something called a cistern. A cistern is a flushing mechanism, and that mechanism is built usually for a lot of people built into the wall. Now, when this needs replacement or when something goes wrong with it, the end consumer has to end up breaking the entire wall. And we saw that as a huge hassle and something that needs to be changed. So we developed a tankless range. This range doesn't require any cistern at all whatsoever. So you don't have to break your wall if anything happens. If you wanted to replace or change your product when 10 years down the line, you don't have to break your wall. And it also saves space. And these are things that I think are very important, that you have to keep thinking about and innovating and looking at the status quo and questioning, is this the need of the consumer?
Thank you, Shashwat. I think that was really insightful to look at how products are changing in the bathroom space. It's especially important, like you said, given the times that we're in at the moment. I would like to move on to Suprajit, our next architect. Congratulations, Suprajit.
Thank you.
And you've been selected from a number of nominees because your project really stood out in terms of being very forward in its use of technology in architecture. So can you tell us a little bit about the project that you worked on recently, and showcase how you've used technology in your design?
So first of all, I would like to thank all of you for bringing me out here. Initially, I thought that I was chosen for the mass exploration program because they were being asking about so many things from me, my website, my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so many things. But anyway, I think I represent a very interesting generation of architects who are doing really meaningful work in our country. The project that I am talking about is a Durga Puja pavilion. And for those who does not really know what exactly that is, Durga Puja is the largest religious festival in West Bengal, the part of India that we belong to. And it calls for an immense agglomeration of people in the scale of millions. So it is one of the largest festivals that you can see in the world as well. Now, when we were asked to do this design, before we start, let me just give you an overview of what exactly the festival is and how it has changed from what it was started. Now, in the inset, you see a picture that was 200 years ago, how it started. The festival was started by the local zamindars and landlords who wanted to appease their colonial masters and also to show their pomp and luxury with their subjects. So essentially, it evolved as a very intrinsic kind of a festival within the house. And at that time, in those times, it was very sustainable because they used to make all these deities from the mud and silt from the river. And once the puja is done, the idol was immersed into the river back. So the material was actually recycled. And again, in the next year, you used to have the silt and everything. And then again, you build the deities. And the basic framework used to be retained. Now, 200 years later, when we were asked to do this design, primarily there were two trends. Prior to this, architects rarely did Durga Puja pavilions. They were done by artists, and there were primarily two trends. One was to replicate a certain structure. It could be, you know, the pyramid, it could be the Taj Mahal, it could be any other structure that was represented in a smaller scale. The other one was the change in material. Suppose the entire pavilion was made out of plates, copper plates. Sometimes they were made out of straws. So it was more of an artistic installation. Now, as an architect, when we were asked to intervene on this, we thought that we suck at both of them. You know, as architects, we only know how to manipulate space. So we started working on how the space can be manipulated to have this kind of design. Because when you're designing an urban precinct, you're talking about so many different kinds of people with their different tastes and different backgrounds. Normally what happens when you design an architectural project, you know exactly who your clients are, and you can actually cater according to their needs. But when you're designing a public place, there are so many people that actually comes over here. So the first thing that we thought was we have to have a balance between technology and tradition. We can't just have any one of them, because there is no point in designing something that was done 200 years back. So there was no point in replicating that. We were designing something in 21st century. So why not use the latest technologies? So as a part of that, we started using latest materials like steel and acrylic sheets that were not used before. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Can we just, yeah. So the basic concept was, as the person was moving from the outside to the inside pavilion, he or she was moving from earth to heaven. And that transition was done through a curvilinear space, and in which the colors on the panels actually changed. So for us, red represented the earth, the worldly pleasures and everything. And when you enter, the entire thing was done in blue. And this is how, if you compare the temple architecture of something like Khajuraho or something of that sort, you will see the outside of the temples were actually cladded with worldly figures and worldly senses. And as you go inside the sanctum, slowly you're taken to a spiritual level. So that ideology was represented here in this pavilion. Now, we obviously changed the language in which we were trying to express that. We used modern technologies. We used Rhino and Revit and Grasshopper to formulate the entire model. And can you move on to the next slide? Yeah. So this is a very interesting graphic. As you can see that in 2015, there was 1 million people actually visited one particular pavilion. We are talking about 1 million means it is the population of an entire city. Now, when we're talking about the public conglomeration of that sort, we thought that it is better to think of them as a fluid. You know, the entire crowd was thought of as a fluid rather than individual persons. And we thought of designing a container which actually allowed that fluidity to channelized. So individually, the persons may do different things, but basically on an overall larger aspect, they were channeled into a particular way, and they were taken into the pavilion, and then they were going out. So the curves and everything was done accordingly, and we modeled various, because of the linearity of spaces, we modeled in Grasshopper various forms and shapes, and we finally arrived at a particular shape. Now, the 4 pillars that you see in the middle, they are called the trees of life, and they were sort of the connection that started between the heaven and earth. They were the symbolic structures there, and through that tree of structures, you can actually see the original deity, the Ma Durga from there. And everything here was done with metals and acrylics. Now, traditionally, all of these materials were used with either bamboo or fabric or cloth. But we have, in this particular pavilion design, we have not used those traditional things. But then we have tried to have the philosophy and the way that they were used, only changed the materials. Now, the next slide, please. Now, this tree of pillar, if you see the grasshopper model, it has got 4 colors because we were designing in the middle of the street. And traditionally what happens is when you do it with bamboo and everything has to be done in situ. So the traffic was blocked. But because we use steel structures, we were able to do it in some workshops and then transport it. So we made the entire thing, cut it according to these color combinations, like 4, they were cut into 4 parts and they was kept in a separate thing. And then during the 2 or 3 days before the puja, actual puja starts, they were brought over and they were assembled at site and they were then done. So by doing this, we were able to keep the traffic unblocked for at least 7 days more than that was necessary. So this is how I think we had tried to emulate the entire thing. So I have a video. I don't know. I don't think I'll be able to play that video. We would have loved to show you how the things would have been. But in general, this is how we have approached this, because for us the technology is like a brush. When you're doing a painting. When you do a painting, you require different kinds of brushes, and accordingly you choose what brush to use. And for that, for this pavilion, we thought that parametricism was a very powerful tool, and we could use it not only for the aesthetics but also for the functional parts. So that's how we did it.
Thank you so much, Subhajit. It's really interesting to see how you used parametric architecture to create an experience of such a traditional experience, but move it and make it really modern through your approach. I'd like to thank all the panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your work with us. It's been really insightful to see the various applications of technology in your work. We'd like to move on to our quick, short next segment where we'll be asking you a few short questions. So if I can start off with Arjun, I'd like to ask you, so if you could redesign or design a past project, either of yours or a historic project, given the materials and tools that we have today, it could even be on a famous site that you'd love to work on, what do you think it would be?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. I think everything is a reflection of time and place. I think it's best to leave it that way.
All right. Not even the Colosseum or the Taj Mahal with a very
wouldn't touch it. They're beautiful. They're perfect as they are.
Absolutely.
All right, great. Thank you. Maybe Shashwat, you want to?
Yeah. Subhajit, my question is for you. What do you think is a project that is way ahead of its time, and why?
I think the pyramids. The pyramids of the Egypt. If I really want to have, how do you define something which is ahead of its time? We can only see that in retrospect, because generally we design buildings for space. We do not design building for time. But pyramid is something that you can place anywhere, anytime in the world, and it will still gel with the overall morphology of the entire cityscape. So I think, and it has got an apparent, simplicity. The way you look at it, it's very geometric and it's very minimalist. And you think that, okay, it's very simple. And then you start pondering that, wow, it was done 5,000 years back, and how the hell did they manage? So I think that structure really, intrigues me a lot. And I think it's a very ahead of the time structure. Even, I don't know, maybe from outside world, who knows?
Great. Zainab, what do you think? One material or fabrication technique that you'd love to work with on your next project?
Well, first of all, I think I'm having the hardest questions of all. No, because I'm really actually obsessed with stone, and I was jealous of Arjun's work, and it was so amazing. And I really love found objects in the nature, and I really love the grain and the texture and the stone as it is, you know, how it exists actually in nature. And I really would love to work on milling stone, really. So I was very interested in Arjun's work really at the beginning.
Okay.
I think shaping stone, I mean, I know there are softer stones and it's sometimes easier to mold some kinds, but I've never worked with stone, and I really love to work with my hands. So maybe we can get rid of technology, and I would love to be able to like carve and make things out of stone, really, starting with my hand, and then we can get into milling and some machines, maybe.
Okay. Thanks, Zainab. Shashwat, what do you think?
Yeah. Okay, my next question is for Poonam. Poonam, you know, the pandemic has been a catalyst for the adoption of technology in general for everyone, but how do you see technology specifically influencing your work? And would it be a driver for your projects going forward? For example, you know, voice controlled elevators or self-opening doors, or, you know, any sort of experiential technology that just change the way we live our lives?
I think surely, I mean, technology has only been a boon to also post this pandemic. I think the fact that the last 5 months we have not stopped working, it's only thanks to technology. We are feeling like a community, and the fact that I'm connected with my clients, there's a lot of work that is going on. I just realized that why did I have to take all those flights, which I should have just avoided and done all these Zoom meetings and clarified so much that, you know, could have. So I think the whole approach to design our entire functioning as an organization has changed. We have really, like we were talking in the beginning, that introspection has happened, and we realize where things have gone wrong and why didn't we use the technology that has been there and is evolving. And I think one needs to, like rightly said, as a firm, one needs to evolve and adapt, and that's how there is a success story. So I guess that's what we've been trying to do. We've been educating ourselves to kind of just have work in this format where work from home is acceptable as a format. And it's been a real tough time for us to, maybe for me, I think I'm the only one who's feeling that work at home didn't really work for me. But I think in general, when I speak to my employees, I understand that they are functioning good, and we have log in, log out. I think the whole system has been figured out. So I think the strategy has really worked, and I think this is going to be a way future for ahead. Talking about technology, like you said, in design, we are really trying our best to, because I specialize in homes predominantly, what we try and do is be it touchless technology, be it voice commands, all of this, we're trying to exactly see how it is user friendly for a client. And, you know, because when you're at home, you kind of don't want an overwhelming technology kind of binding your space over there as well, because you kind of are exposed to that in reality, in, you know, in offices and things like that. So we're trying to not go overboard, but yes, we are adapting to that. And the product that you just came up with is fantastic. I think it's a brilliant product. I'm really excited to know more about it and use it.
Thank you. I'll definitely connect with you.
Yes.
Yeah, Shashwat, could you tell us what you think the bathrooms of the future will look like, and what level of automation do you think will drive comfort and health?
That's a very interesting question, because, you know, as I was saying earlier, that technology has just affected our lives in ways that we couldn't have imagined. And I see that being extended to the bathroom as well. Today, you know, we have almost all devices that are IoT. You know, you can wake up and you can have, you can start your coffee without even physically making your coffee. And I don't see that stopping there. I see that extending to the bathroom as well. I know this is, it sounds crazy, but just imagine that you wake up and you go to the bathroom and the toilet seat cover is just warm, waiting for you. I mean, that would be such a great way to start your day, right? Like, you know, the toilet seat is warm. We have a product right now called Automate and eCleanse that does have sort of warm seat covers, but they're not. There's no technology yet to connect that to IoT. And I see maybe in the future that's going to be a thing. And you know, you will finish your business, and then you get up and you go for a shower, and the water is hot already because it knows what time it knows your schedule. It knows that this is the time that you are having a shower, and and then it's a good way of conserving energy, but it's also convenience for everyone. You know, we'd all know if you wake up on a Monday and you have to put the geyser on, and you know, you forgot to put the geyser on, it's the worst Monday. So I can see how this would integrate, and it would just be an extension of our lifestyles as a whole.
I would like to add, I actually recently came across a prototype where this is, I think, by Casa DG, I'm not sure. The entire system is also adding on to an extent of the automation panel. The entire panel knows if you decide to go for an event, it'll choose an outfit for you. It even kind of also tells you if you've repeated this outfit and when and what event, so that you don't repeat the outfit. It also has something where the home chef gets the food that needs to, you know, he has the whole menu for the week, which is coming from the dietitian who's planning your menu, so that it can go as crazy as that. And I just found all of that like a bit too crazy in technology, but I guess it's coming, and people who kind of fancy it are going to adapt to it.
And you might as well just get a ventilator installed at home to breathe for you, and maybe get an IV to feed you, and just lie in bed and, you know, yeah, let technology do all of it for you. Why stop there? You know?
Good one.
Yeah.
All right, Eric, so could you tell us how you see software that you think are going to change the way we work?
I think software is already changing the way we work, right? Like we're currently using Zoom to have this webinar, and then like for us, we're using Slack and like all the Microsoft softwares to like communicate with our teammates, even though we're at home. One thing I want to point out is that we actually, like during this COVID pandemic, we wrote a contact tracing app ourselves to trace like all the employees and their contacts in our office. So that, like, let's say if one employee gets sick, then we don't have to evacuate the entire office and things like that. So that's also like one of the benefit of like how we can improve our lives and healthiness. Yeah.
Shashwat.
Yeah. Poonam, I'm back to you actually. This is a question that's a little bit more on a personal level, but what are your sources of inspiration for your architecture?
I'm actually absolutely awed by palaces, and that's been my thing as a kid. I think if my dad or we would go for a holiday, I would just be happy to enter a palace or something that's absolutely palatial. The fact that the entire volume of spaces and the glamour and the styling, that's something that I think I've taken, you know, absorbed that into my designing and bringing that to a modern living. And that's my adaptation, I guess. That's any kind of palace or large kind of gathering spaces. I think that again is really, so this is my inspiration always.
Yeah, well, we hope to see a large gathering space soon. Haven't seen one in years.
Eric, could you recommend a book or a movie or a TV show for architects or designers to watch that you find inspiring?
I think architecture to me is like, it's a hobby that I really like preciously enjoy. And even though I'm not practicing it, I think in general, actually, like once I actually learned about Adrian's work on like the Netflix documentary, like they travel around the world and talk about different architecture. I actually saw Adrian's private residence on there. So the moment I saw his slideshow, I was so excited that I'm like meeting this person.
We're all gonna go home and watch your documentary. You had a Netflix documentary, Arjun?
I see it's a Netflix show, and then in one of the episodes, it shows about Adrian's work. I think it's called the most fantastic architecture or something like that. I can
The
find
world's
it.
most extraordinary homes.
Yeah.
Extraordinary homes, I think. Yeah.
Very fancy title.
Thanks, Eric.
We loved watching it, Arjun.
It's very kind of you. Thank you.
Arjun, we've got maximum questions on that project. There are a lot of questions. We're going to email you all those questions.
Or they can just go and see it. I mean, I'm sure they would answer their question. It's open.
Can we go?
Absolutely. Let things ease off, and then everyone's welcome. Look, we keep it open. It's it's a family home, but friends go there, acquaintances go there, random people land up there wanting to go inside. So it's open doors. We made it, but I don't think this kind of thing should belong to anyone. It's open. If people want to see it, they can see it.
Well,
lovely.
Soon.
Once the pandemic is over, I'm definitely going.
Yes, you guys need to come down. Yeah.
Yes.
Make a trip to India, and Shashwat, you must tell Sandeep that if Hindware is truly committed to technology, get some of these path breakers down here and work on something experimental. Yeah.
I would love to.
And the waving WCs are fine, but this is more fun.
Well, Arjun actually brings me to a question. You are one of the wisest people that I've met, and I think, you are. Don't be shocked about that, but you are. If you could give one piece of advice to the attendees, what would you give?
First of all, I don't know who you hang out with, but I take that as a compliment irrespective. Piece of advice, I don't know. Just develop the ability to distill and cut the noise. I suppose there's just way too much going on. You have to be able to, I think, my kid's 7 years old now, and he's going to school, and obviously things have changed since the time I went to school and my father went to school, and we were, yeah. So we were taught to consume information, right? And now that's no longer a concern. It's all at your fingertips. So I think being able to develop a value system or a system of ethics to simply be able to read and interpret the world around you or the reality around you is, I think, fundamental, because there's just way too much data to process. That's the best I could tell people, at least from my point of view.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely true. I think there is definitely too much noise, and we all know that WhatsApp University is the largest university right now, so we do have to be very careful.
Yeah. Zainab, could you tell us a little bit about what you think would be your favorite city, which has the best or most beautiful architecture?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, first of all, I think we need to evaluate every piece of architecture, within its context, within the time that it's built. So if we add them all up, I don't think there's one city that has the best architecture, overall. But I, of course, need to say Rome, because after living there with Pratt Institute in 2016 for 4 months, and seeing how urbanistically actually it works, that ancient city with only 3 modern buildings that exist in the city, basically, I was just so inspired by how the different the little alleyways opening up to piazza. So I can't choose one building over there, but I really appreciate a lot of ancient historical cities like that. But Rome is, I think, the most beautiful place, really. And I was so obsessed with the Noli plan, because they made us study it so much, not because of that only, but it's just very interesting how they built that city in those times, for the needs of the people, the piazzas for people to gather in. So there was always like a sense of meeting at that place with the fountain and the church and all that. So I think it's very sensitive as a city. So I need to say Rome if we're choosing one.
Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You also went to Rome with school, right?
No, I actually didn't. I was in New York.
No.
Yeah. My biggest regret of Pratt is not going to Rome.
It's okay. But yeah, wonderful place.
Last question, Subhrajit. When you think of architecture and design, what one building comes to your mind?
I think the Capitol Complex Chandigarh by Corbusier. Yes, because you can love or hate modernist architecture. You can say a lot of things about for and against it, but I think prior to that, it was built in 1950s, and prior to that, we had mostly colonial and Indo-Saracenic architecture. So that single building, or I would say the Capitol complex itself, made a huge impact. It was very bold, and sometimes you need a very bold architecture to define a new nation. I mean, completely on the opposite spectrum was the Gandhi Ashram by Charles Correa, you might say, as a counterpoint. But in this context of a new nation, I think it made a lot of impact. So whenever we talk about architecture and design and how they can impact a society or a country, I would say the Capitol Complex by Corbusier. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I think before we move forward, it's Subhajit's birthday, so I think we all can wish him. It's
Happy birthday.
Happy
Happy birthday.
Great one, man.
Thank you so much. Oh, somebody's singing.
It's I think all coming together.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, everyone.
We have a lot of questions, but I'm assuming we've passed our time, and so but there's this one question which I really want to take because it's kind of really I felt I should kind of ask this to everybody. So there's a question by Sayam Malik. He wants to understand whether technology is being just used to put comfort in clients' residences, or it really creates a design space of some sort, and technology is taking the essence and warmth of the house away to a certain extent.
This is a big argument.
That's why I thought I'll toss this.
Yes. When I interact with clients, I have especially when we do homes, we always are catering to the service to what home that they dream of, that they want out of their house. In the end, it's the clients who are going to dwell in it, and it's really just the comfort. So to me, personally, I feel like an overwhelming of technology can also be a bit too much. And I think I mentioned that in the beginning. I just find it like it needs to just about give you comfort and it's the lifestyle you want to live. So then whatever caters to the lifestyle that one decides to, and the kind of lifestyle, and maybe they're busy, one is a lawyer, one is a creative person. So it really is very, very personal. And I love it because I love what I do with homes and residences, and it's very personal. We get into literally finding out what, just understanding the psychology of the client and what exactly they need from the project. So I feel, yes, a bit too much is a bit too much, but to each its own. Technology is like this is a very personal thing. For somebody, it's like, hey, how come you don't know about it? We need to change with times, and this is something I need like, I don't want to see the wires and give me everything in one gadget. So that's one person's thing, and one feels that I can totally get up and switch on the light myself. I don't need the phone to do it. So it's really two different people, and that's my take on this. So
anybody with a different take? We are, I think.
I think
I think this quarantine, I think, has definitely changed. I think a lot of perception of, I think a lot of assuming I think everybody has kind of gone back to old ways of living. I think from what I think last 4 months has been a learning for all of us. So thank you so much. I think it's been a pleasure to have all of you on board. And next Architect is going to feature another few sessions as we try and reach maximum architects across the globe. And Shashwat, you want to add something? But it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Ria. Thank you, Arjun. Thank you, Subhrajit. Thank you, Eric, Poonam. Thank you so much for joining in. And Shashwat, over to you. Anything you want to add?
Yeah. I mean, this was a fantastic session. I mean, I couldn't have thought it would be, any better. It's been fantastic. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the panelists and as well as all the attendees as well. I think they were very enthusiastic and the engagement was perfect. And Hindware, along with AceTech, foresees this as a very, very bright start. And we see this being a series that's going to be here for some time now. We want to keep having these conversations. We want to keep having these relevant conversations that can help build a more sustainable future for all of us. Thank you, Ria, for curating this and taking this initiative. And lastly, I would like to mention that, this is a platform where we all come together to engage. And I just came across a quote that I think put it across very, very well, which is architecture starts when you carefully put two bricks together. That's where it begins. And that's how I'd like to end it. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. See you.
Thank you.
Lovely speaking to you. Bye-bye. Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Thank you.